My husband asked for a divorce, then changed his mind hours later. Background: we've been together for 2 years, married for 1. We're both in our early 20s. The night of the bullshit, we'd had an argument about the distribution of chores that, I think, triggered it. I thought it wasn't fair that I was doing the majority of the housework, on top of being a full-time student at university and having a job. He seemed to think the chore distribution was fair and that I was overreacting. We came to a solution after all the bullshit I'm about to tell you about occurred. But essentially, I was feeling overwhelmed and unheard, and he was feeling stressed and confused as to why I thought this was a problem. Later that night, we're discussing the situation again, and I express how it feels like he's not listening to me and how distant he's been lately. Then he says there's a reason for the distance, and I ask him to tell me why. He says that he thinks we move too fast. He doesn't know who he is, and he wants a divorce. He says he cares about me, but doesn't love me, and that he's been feeling this way for a while. Now, I've promised myself since years ago that I would never try to make someone stay with me if they don't want to. So, as much as this hurt, I said okay. I cried, he cried. I did ask if he wanted to try couples therapy before divorcing, but he said no. We decided to sort out details in the morning. I grabbed some blankets to sleep on the couch and he went upstairs to bed. In the midst of my sitting on the couch crying and looking up apartments, what felt like hours later, I hear him get up and come to the living room. He sits down next to me and just says I fucked up so bad. I freeze when I hear this because I've barely processed the reality of what just happened and I can already see where he's going next. I ask him to elaborate and he says he doesn't want a divorce, that he doesn't know why he said that, and he's feeling the most regret he's ever experienced in his life. He says that he realizes he fucked up and I don't have to take him back. At this point, I've experienced so much emotional whiplash that I've completely numbed out. I'd already cried all the tears I could. Now was just sitting there next to my sobbing husband and saying I'd take him back even though I'd barely processed the fact that he'd wanted to divorce me. I told him I wanted couples counseling and for him to get individual therapy, and he agreed. I've asked him about individual therapy in the past, but he never wanted to until now. It's days later now. I've gone through all the stages of being mad at him, depressed that my marriage almost ended, insecure about myself, accepting the reality, feeling love for him, feeling numb. Cycling through all these emotions over and over again at random. We're searching for a couples counselor, but a lot of them have waitlist right now. So in the meantime, I just want to know, if anyone has been in a similar situation, does it get better? Does the trust ever come back? I feel like I can't trust him at all now. When he touches me, I freak out sometimes because that's not the comforting feeling I'm used to when he touches me. It's the feeling like he's suffocating me. I want to be here for him and help him through whatever mental shit he's going through. But this has been affecting my work and my school. I left my dream school for him. I can't just keep prioritizing him above everything else when he clearly doesn't do the same for me. And yet until now he was doing the same for me. He's always been so sweet, buying me flowers, making dinner, going out of his way to make time for us. And before you scream abuse, please know I've been in abusive relationships before, and they felt nothing like this. He's not like those guys. This is the first time he's ever done something like this. I just don't know how we can recover. Any advice about how to get through this would be appreciated. TL, Doctor. Husband asked for a divorce, then changed his mind hours later. I don't know how to ever trust him again. Have you subscribed yet? Hit that like button, ring the bell so you never miss a thing, and help us grow. Your support means the world. Now, let's jump into the part you've all been waiting for, reading and reacting to your awesome comments. The user Naive Selection 7113 said, "You never say the D word unless you mean it. The day it becomes a household word, everything you worked for is dead. Don't say it even once if you don't mean it. That one hit hard. I get what he's saying. Divorce should never be the card you slam down in the middle of a fight just to win. It's a bomb, and once it goes off, the pieces never fit the same again. His whole message was a love letter to resilience. Even when things got bad, they remembered that promise and it kept them tethered. I admire that, but it also makes me wonder how many of us say things we don't mean, not realizing we just shifted the ground under someone's feet forever. Then Valkyrie's word chimed in. Once he said it, I think the reality of being alone set in and he got scared. I've seen that too many times. People drop the hammer thinking they're just saying something. But once the silence sinks in, once the threat becomes possible, fear follows. But fear doesn't erase the truth. If he has felt that way for a while, that's not fear talking. That's a slow brewing reality finally spilling out. And you can't unsay what came from a deep place. Sassy Sapsy shared, turns out her husband had been talking to an ex. When he told the ex he asked for a divorce, the ex freaked out and skedaddled. Here's the thing, when someone throws divorce out like a dare, sometimes it's bait, sometimes it's to see who they can catch or chase. It's manipulative. If you're testing your marriage to measure someone else's reaction well, you're already halfway out the door. And dragging your spouse along for that ride is just cruel. Lithogerif and Razmoon both had the same gut feeling. Check the phone, the timing. The confession, the retraction, something about it smells off. When people suddenly shift from I want out to never mind, I always wonder who they called. In between, it's not being paranoid, it's connecting the dots. If there was someone else in the picture, it puts everything in a new, painful light. Fun_Woodpecker795 quietly admitted, you are spot on. I'm in the middle of this sort of drama. There's something haunting about how many people are nodding along to this, like it's all too familiar. When love becomes uncertain, when commitment feels conditional, the walls of your life start to feel paper thin. Then we hear from someone anonymous. I don't understand why people in their early 20s rush into marriage. Maybe he realized he wants to live a little more. That part stings because there's truth in it. We romanticize young love. But marriage isn't just about love, it's about timing, maturity, knowing yourself. And if you barely know yourself, how can you know what you want from a lifelong partner? Sometimes I don't love you anymore is just code for I outgrew who I was when I married you. Universal_Eugen gave us something tender. Even though we live separately and divorce has come up, we still love each other. That line is powerful. There's something to be said for loving someone even when you know the life you imagined with them might not survive. It's painful, but also real. You can still feel love and still recognize incompatibility. That's not failure, it's maturity. None_the_wiser said, if he told me he no longer loved me, I would not be able to move forward, saying, that's not a bruise you recover from, it's a fracture. When someone tells you the love is gone, the foundation shifts. Even if you try to rebuild, you'll always be waiting for it to crack again. Freya_of_Milfgard warned us, my parents threw divorce around like confetti. Don't have that kind of marriage. There's generational trauma in that. When divorce becomes a threat instead of a process, it loses meaning, but it also shatters trust. Her story is a warning that what you model becomes what you tolerate. Astardia offered insight into the why now question. He said all this after she asked for basic effort, right? It wasn't a breakup over infidelity or betrayal, it was a meltdown over dishes and shared responsibilities. That's what makes it feel less like honesty and more like deflection. Using emotional bombs to escape basic accountability is a pattern. And those patterns don't fix themselves just because someone says sorry. She was only 23, but already felt like she'd aged 10 years in a single night. The kind of night where time fractures first into minutes that hurt, then into hours that blur, and suddenly you find yourself sitting on a couch that isn't really a couch anymore. It's just a place where everything fell apart. The fight had started over chores. On paper, something so small. But anyone who's ever lived with someone they love knows that the little things are never little. They're just symptoms, a sink, Full of dishes becomes a tally of who's trying. A messy floor becomes a metaphor for how much weight one person is carrying. So when she told him she was overwhelmed studying, working, keeping the house running, she wasn't just asking him to vacuum. She was asking him to show up, to see her, to meet her where she was drowning. Instead, he asked for a divorce. No yelling, no door slamming. Just a plain, devastating sentence. I care about you, but I don't love you. And just like that, everything she'd built started to unravel. She didn't scream, she didn't beg, she said okay. Because years ago she'd promised herself that she'd never fight to keep someone who wanted to leave, even if it broke her. Even if it turned her into a stranger to herself. But that wasn't the end. Of course it wasn't. Hours later, after she'd sat on that couch silently disintegrating, crying until she couldn't feel her face, Googling apartments through swollen eyes, he came downstairs. Shaking, crying, saying he made a mistake. Saying he didn't know why he said what he said. Saying she didn't have to take him back. And here's the part no one talks about, she did. Not because she'd forgiven him, not because she understood him, but because she was still in shock. She was too wrecked to do anything else. That's the kind of trauma that doesn't come with clarity. It comes with numbness. You become a ghost in your own story. Now days have passed, and she's circling through emotions like laundry on spin. Anger, sadness, love, resentment, fear, confusion. One moment she remembers how sweet he used to be, bringing flowers, cooking dinner, making time. The next moment she recoiled when he touches her, because his hands don't feel like love anymore. They feel like betrayal, like suffocation. She doesn't know what to believe. He says he didn't mean it, that he's never felt more regret, that he wants therapy, and maybe that's true. Maybe he's a good man who had a breakdown and made the worst mistake of his life. Maybe he's not the kind of man who would hurt her again, but that doesn't change what already happened. He said he didn't love her, and you can't unhear that. What's worse is the realization that she gave up pieces of herself for him. Her dream school, her time, her sanity. She did what so many women do, put herself on pause for the sake of us. And now she's wondering, what's left of her that doesn't revolve around him? Because even now, even after he shattered her heart, she's still thinking about how to support him. She wants to help him find a therapist. She wants to understand what he's going through. She wants to fix it, but who's helping her? And it's not that he's a monster. That's the cruel part. If he'd been awful all along, she could walk away clean, but he wasn't. He was loving, thoughtful, present, until suddenly he wasn't. Until the man who used to kiss her forehead and make her tea said, "I don't love you," like it was the weather. And that's the kind of pain that doesn't bruise, it lingers. It makes you question every kiss, every memory. Every morning he said "I love you" and maybe didn't mean it. She wonders now if trust can grow back. She doesn't know. The roots are scorched. And while she's waiting for a couples therapist to have an opening, she's also waiting to feel like herself again. To stop jumping when he touches her. To stop playing detective with his words. To stop feeling like she's loving a man who might vanish the next time life gets hard. And yes, she's scared. Scared that he'll do it again, that the next time the sink is full and the bills are late and the stress is high, he'll panic and say the same thing. Because now she knows it's possible. He taught her that. And some lessons, no matter how much therapy you throw at them, stay burned into your nervous system. But here's the part I admire about her despite everything. She's not pretending. She's not minimizing. She's not calling this normal or okay or something she should just get over. She's looking at it for what it is, a fracture in the foundation. And maybe it's reparable. Maybe it's not, but either way, she's finally asking the right question. Is this still a partnership that nurtures me, or one that asks me to sacrifice myself again and again just to keep the peace? And that, I think, is where healing begins, not in whether he changes, not in how, Sorry, he says he is. But in whether she chooses herself from this point forward, whether she goes back to that dream school, whether she lets herself grieve the version of their marriage that died that night, whether she realizes that sometimes love isn't enough and it shouldn't have to hurt like this to be real. So yes, maybe it gets better. Maybe they do the work, go to counseling, rebuild. But it only gets better if the love is matched by accountability. And if she stops bleeding just to keep the relationship alive. Because the truth is, love that threatens to leave when it's inconvenient isn't love, it's fear wearing a mask. And no one deserves to keep choosing someone who once looked them in the eyes and decided to walk away, not without reckoning with the weight of those words. And she knows that now. Even if it takes her time to act on it, she knows. If this story moved you, subscribe and comment what you do in the main character's place.